All righty. It's been what, 3.5, 4 years. We are finally live with you guys tonight on Panthers on Tap. Excited to get into things. We've been off really, I think it's been more than a month. July 13th, I think, was our last episode. So it's been a long time. I know you guys have been waiting a while. But it's training camp time. So we thought we'd go up big. We're going to start doing live episodes from here on out, which is exciting. We got some big news coming up. Might have a partnership here shortly. So we got some things coming down the pipeline that we're excited about and getting ready to roll here. Training camp, first time ever in Charlotte. This is the time of year that jobs are won and lost. Bryson, are you ready to roll tonight?
I'm so ready, man. The best three words in the English language: football is back. I'm excited for it, man. I'm excited,
Dude. And it gives you a little hope. I mean, everyone starts off at that 0-0 slate, clean slate for everyone. So I gotta ask you, what are you drinking tonight? We used to do this. I think we're gonna bring this back from here on out as well. So what do you got in your glass over there, or can?
Yeah, I can. First of all, always using the Bobati Show koozie. Shout out to him. Got my Panthers culture shirt on that he sent me, repping some of my favorite people on Twitter. But I'm drinking a beer called the lighting's bad, but Something Cold. It is from Edmund Oast in Charleston, South Carolina. It is my favorite light beer on the market. It is so good.
Wow.
I think you'd like it a lot, Curtis. But the name is Sweet Something Cold, and that's exactly what it is. It's great, man. So I highly recommend it.
Yeah, well, for folks that don't know, I'm coming off of COVID. I actually had COVID last week when we were on two fans, or I knew I was going to get this wrong. I knew I blew it. Two fans in the stands, which another great Panthers creator. We had a lot of guys on there that we look up to and appreciate. So if you go check them out as well. But we were on there last week. I was sicker than hell. I almost canceled. I'm like, no, I can't do that. We already committed. But yeah, I'm drinking. I'm drinking what I had left from when we went to the beach a couple of weeks ago. So I got a Pacifico, choking that down here. It's actually pretty smooth. I wish I had a lime, but a lot to talk about tonight. First training camp practice today. Finally got to see some of the new guys. Got a lot of new faces coming on to this team. Obviously, a new staff as well. So we really got a lot to talk about. But before we get into that, I did want to take a moment of silence. I want to show you guys this. It's sad times in the Spartanburg area this evening, and really this whole week and the next couple of weeks. And that's this. So we just want to take a moment of silence for the Petroid up in down in Gaffney there. So let's take a few seconds here to remember the beautiful sight that this provided all of us Panther fans when we were driving down to Spartanburg.
Amen.
All right, cheers. Enough of that. But yeah, these are some of the photos that we took headed down to Spartanburg the last couple of years of that beautiful peach, and just thought it would be funny to showcase that, because I know a lot of people really miss that it isn't in Spartanburg any longer, but we're now in Charlotte, which we both love. It's a little bit closer to our neck of the woods. But let's get into it. Let's talk football. Let's talk about what kind of transpired today. And I guess we'll just start off, Bryson, just your overall observations of day one in Charlotte. And yeah, we'll just kick it off from there.
Yeah, I think one of the most apparent things from day one really that we've seen is the connection between Bryce Young and Deontay Johnson is real. Dave Canales made the comment that the offense is essentially, where's Deontay Johnson at right now? And they're trying to fit other people in to that offense and find a spot for him. But the connection, it looked natural. It looked like they've been playing together for years. From a little bit that we saw, a couple of videos I saw on Twitter, but that connection was great. I love seeing it. Exactly the kind of receiver that Bryce Young needs. I think I think getting Deontay Johnson in like the 7th or 6th round he's going in right now in fantasy football is going to be a steal. So I'm going to be doing that in every league that I can, because I think he's going to have those similar numbers to Adam Thielen last year. So that was great to see. I caught a little bit of Eddie Pinheiro. I think he had a really good day. 5 for 5 kicking, I think is what I saw. Along with
52 yarder.
Yeah, 52 yarder. So got a little competition going there. I don't think Harrison Mevis kicked at all. I don't know if they're rotating days or whatever the case is, but yeah, that was cool to see. And I think Andy Dalton threw a pick 6 to Alex Cook. I was worried at first because I saw 7-on-7 pick 6 Alex Cook, like the quarterback wasn't named, so I was like, oh, here we go. We're gonna blame Bryce Young, but I was kind of happy to see it was Andy Dalton, and Bryce Young had a really good day by all accounts.
Yeah, I mean, I think out of the jump, establishing that connection earlier with Deontay Johnson was good to see. I saw a couple of the videos as well. And I'll just tell folks that are listening to us, we appreciate everyone right now. Give us your comments, suggestions, any questions you guys got, we'll answer them. But for folks who play fantasy football, you better go get Deontay Johnson because the guy's going to light it up for you. And I think a lot of people are going to be sleeping on his connection with Bryce Young this year. And I think Panther fans kind of get a step up in that regard when it comes to him. I think he's going to get a lot of touches, hopefully a lot of touchdowns this year. Again, it's early on. I don't want to be sipping the juice too early here, but I think you're going to see a lot of that with Johnson and Bryce Young. And, Canales talked about that today. Like they want to find someone to feature in this offense. And right now that's Deontay Johnson, and he is a special talent. And they're going to take, every bit of advantage of that. And you're going to see mismatches off that. And I think establishing a connection with that early, that's also going to build off of just other targets for Bryce. And it's going to open things up for other guys because, the defenses are going to see that. And then you're going to see Thielen. Obviously, he got open a lot last year, but you're going to see Thielen open. You're going to see Leggett open, Mingo, Tremble. And then obviously he's going to have his check down too at the running back position. So I think that's really good. Leggett, what'd you think of Leggett today? Because it sounded like he took things pretty hard, which I was refreshed to see. I mean, that's good. I don't recall Mingo being that way at all last year from what I can remember from some of his press conferences, but Leggett he seemed pretty beat up about, his performance today. I don't think he caught a pass. Obviously, we weren't at practice day, but from what we've seen, it didn't look like he got a ton of activity, and he just wanted things to get cleaned up. And it was good to see him because he missed, mandatory minicamp. He was there, but he wasn't playing because of the hamstring. So it was kind of good to see him out there. But I'm glad that he's not satisfied at all, which is really good and refreshing.
Yeah, he's hungry for sure. I think I saw Mike K tweet that he got some end arounds, but I don't know if he was targeted in any of like the 7-on-7 drills. So, I'm happy to hear that, he wants to be in, and he wants to be involved, and he wants to be part of the offense. I mean, that's exactly why we drafted him in the first round. So it's refreshing to hear, like you say. I thought the comment from J.C. Horn was pretty cool about lining up opposite of him and you're hanging on for dear life because he's so damn strong. I thought that was hilarious. And yeah, I think we're going to see more of him, obviously, throughout training camp, and he'll be involved, and he will hopefully be less harder on himself, the more we get through training camp. But it's day one, and let's see where it goes.
Let's talk about J.C. Horn. You mentioned him a little bit. And they were asking him today about, contract talks, which I'm glad they did because obviously we know he's on his 5th-year option right now. They picked it up. But where do you see J.C. Horn? It sounds like no contract talks have really been established at this point. And, it seems like I think the quote today was he just wants the front office to know he's available, and he's here and he's ready to go, and he's not like holding out or anything. He's just happy to be where he's at and prove to them that he can stay healthy for a full season.
Yeah, I absolutely love that attitude that he's bringing. I think someone of his caliber of talent could go the other way and be a holdout and want that new contract. And although he's not been on the field, I think the team would probably have to give into it just with the lack of depth at that position. So for him to like be so real about it and realize that he hasn't um, been on the field as much as he wanted to be, whether that's outside of his circumstances or not. I think that's refreshing to hear as well. I think Canales has really brought a lot of buy-in to this team from offense and defense and even special teams, uh, minus the kicker maybe. Uh, but yeah, I think seeing Horn on the field, hopefully having a healthy season, he's going to earn that contract. We all know what he can do when he's healthy, and we just got to see him put it together. And God forbid he gets injured this year, but I think this is the year that we finally do get the full J.C. Horn season, and he's known around the league as one of the top corners in the league.
Yeah, Carter asked, what would we be willing to pay J.C. Horn? I guess I'm kind of eating my words if I'm a GM right now, because I remember I tweeted out the other day on our account, Panthers on Tap on Twitter. Go check us out if you're not on there already. But they had I think it was PFF's, someone had a ranking out there, and it was a top 10 corners in the league. And I straight out said, like, if he's healthy, I think he's a top 10 corner in the NFL. And I truly believe that. And I think probably you would agree with me on that, or he's damn near at that cusp of that 10 mark. But I'm just looking at contracts right now. The top like 10 guys is like 19 and up a year. He'd probably be looking between like 13 to 15, I would think, million a year. If I'm trying to remember the Dante Jackson contract he got a couple years ago when Carolina paid him. Obviously, I think he's way better than Dante. But I think it would be probably in that range, and I would probably be comfortable within that range with him, because I do think he's a hell of a player. But I'm just looking at some of these guys right now that Travarius Ward at 13 and a half, Carlton Davis 14, Jalen Johnson 19 a year. So it would probably be in that range. And it could even be more. I mean, if he plays a full season this year, it could be in the 18 to 20 range. And Carolina will have to make a decision then. But yeah, I think if he can play a full season and prove that he's available, you got to keep like guys like that around. You can't keep getting rid of players. You can't keep getting rid of your best players and getting rid of them and dishing them out to other teams, because there's no way to sustain success that way. So I think Carolina, I mean, obviously if he does play a whole season and is healthy, I think he's worth another contract for sure.
Yeah, and getting rid of your best players for pennies on the dollar as well. So I think there's two different scenarios. Obviously, if he's injured again, you really consider what it's worth moving forward. He's obviously pretty injury prone if it happens again, and you really think, is it worth giving someone a long-term contract that hasn't proven to this point he's been able to stay on the field. But he plays a healthy season. I think you're going to be a little bit higher than the $13 to $15 million range, just based off of the talent and the play that we'll see this season. Because again, I agree with you. He's definitely a top 10 corner if he's healthy. He is the true lockdown, take away a half of the side of the field, and you just don't target him because he's there. He is where he needs to be. I think we've seen that when he's been on the field. So I would think he'd be a little higher, maybe like 17 to 19 million a year, and I would pay that absolutely if he's healthy and able to play a full season this year. Even if he's not, like if he plays 10, 12 games and we see that level of play, then I think you still consider it, just based off of, again, the lack of depth at that position. This is a player you invested in a top 10 pick in just a couple of years ago. And Carolina doesn't have an embarrassment of riches. Like, you have to deal with what you got. And J.C. Horn is definitely one of the best players on this team. And unfortunately, he hasn't been able to be on the field as much as he would like to be. So I think you really consider paying him either way. But yeah, I would, no doubt. I would pay J.C. Horn that $17 to $19 million a year.
Let's go to some of the questions, and we can kind of filter in some of the stuff too from obviously day one of training camp. But expectations for this offensive line. Let's start there and kind of transition. And just curious, Bryson, where we're at. Obviously, these guys weren't in pads today. You can't take a whole lot from it. I know it was I saw the Mike K tweet, something about some pressure off the left side, but it sounded like it really wasn't on Icky. And obviously these guys aren't in pads, so it's tough to really evaluate really anyone in the trenches at this point. But what are your expectations for this offensive line? Just kind of set the scene of what you think of the new additions, and then, some of the guys that have returned and your expectations for them this season.
Yeah, I mean, starting with the new additions, I think you got two of the best guards in free agency. You got the best guard in free agency, and then Damian Lewis, who was one of the best ones. I think the guard positions to be pretty solidified, and it might take some time to get some continuity, some familiarity with one another on the offensive line, because it does take getting to know one another and where they're going to be and their tendencies to really mesh. So might start off a little rough to begin with, but I think pretty quickly we'll see that, what we paid for those guards is going to be worth it. I think Taylor Moton is the most consistent player on this team, and he has been for, I don't know how long he's been here, a long time. He is one of the most consistent right tackles in the NFL, and I think he's going to be that again. God forbid any injuries along that offensive line, but the center position and the left tackle, it's definitely a question mark, to say the least. Obviously, we've talked about it before, but the center position, Austin Corbett not playing center ever, and then throwing him in there. And I saw, like, today, Brady Christensen was taking a little bit of center snaps, and I'm assuming he might be the backup by Cade Mays. I don't know what that situation is, but the center is a question mark for sure. I do have faith that Austin Corbett's going to be a decent center and potentially a good one, just because he was a really good guard when he was healthy. But he is coming off some serious injuries, and hopefully he can stay on the field. I think he has the tools to be a good center. He's athletic. He can move. He's smart. Identifying Mike linebackers and blitzers and things like that Bryce Young's going to need. But I think Corbett has potential there, and I hope it goes the right way, not the wrong way. Because if you have pressure up the middle, that's the worst kind of pressure you can have as a quarterback, especially a quarterback of Bryce Young's size. So left tackle, different story. I think Ikem Ekwonu is on his last chance with us to show that he can be a starting left tackle in the NFL. Obviously, you invested, the sixth pick in him. All the tackles early in that draft are kind of struggling a little bit, but I think Ekwonu really, if he doesn't perform up to the ability that we hope he does, then this offense is going to struggle, because, that's Bryce Young's blind side. We saw the issues we had last year of Icky getting beat time and time again. I mean, he was a revolving door at left tackle, and it was bad. I mean, to put it nicely, it was bad. So I hope he has improved, and from some of the interviews that we've seen this offseason from him about understanding that last year was unacceptable, and him realizing that, I hope he has taken the steps this offseason to prepare and be better. Show that in training camp, and then show that week one versus the Saints in New Orleans. So we'll see. I'm nervous about the center and left tackle. A lot more nervous about left tackle than I am center. I think it's a little different from you, but yeah, I think expectations wise, they're going to be better than they were last year, just based off of the guards that they added, and of course
they have to be. I mean, they invested heavily in that interior
for sure. So going to be better than last year. I don't know how much better. Obviously, like I said, it's going to take some time for these guys to get some continuity and really know each other's tendencies. But I'm hoping it's better than last year. I mean, that's my expectation, really, just improvement.
Yeah, I'm echoing a lot of what you said, but the two biggest concerns for me is left tackle and center. Ekwonu, 11 sacks in 2023, which was among the most in league at his position. He also, I think he gave up almost twice as many sacks this past year than he did his rookie season. So obviously he had the sophomore slump. There's no doubt about it. He didn't get very much help at those guard spots as well, though. So he does get a little reprieve there a little bit, because that left guard position and really the other guard spot was a revolving door all season. I think there was like six to eight different guys that started there all year, and half those guys wouldn't start on any other roster in the league. So there's no doubt about he's got to step up. He had an awful season last year, and this offense is tailored more to what he was good at in college and what he succeeded at in the run game and run blocking. So hopefully that you see a jump there. And then obviously he's got, Damian Lewis on his side, and then on the other side is Robert Hunt. I think people need to relax their expectations a little bit with Damian Lewis, because I don't think he's the best guard in the world, but he's definitely better than what they had and a step up. But I would have felt more comfortable if honestly Robert Hunt was the side of Icky. If I'm being brutal, I know Hunt had played at the left guard position, so it makes sense to keep him there. But the right guard spot. But Hunt, I feel, would help out Icky more than Lewis would, and that's just, I think Hunt's is a better guard than what Lewis was in Seattle. So that is my biggest concern, is Icky Ekwonu's growth. Can he make that jump off the sophomore slump? And then Corbett, it scares the hell out of me. I get it. He was a really good guard when healthy, but, back-to-back, season-ending injuries for him. He had 62 starts at guard in the NFL over 70-some games, and has never started in a regular season game at center, which I feel like the center spot is going to be vital for Bryce Young and his development with a young quarterback. The center position is really important for a young guy, and calling out protections and making adjustments along that offensive line and helping out Bryce Young. And I think that's going to, I think Carolina's banking off of, Corbett and just his veteran leadership to make that slide over. And I hope it sounds as easy as they make it sound, because behind him, there's no one. We're talking about Cade Mays and Brady Christensen. I believe Brady Christensen would probably be the backup. And Brady Christensen has never played a snap at center either. So you're talking about the starter and the backup never playing a snap at that position, which that's a little scary to me. So those are the two positions I circle on that offensive line, but I'm hoping that group as a unit collectively, with the guard investment they made, it's going to help, the stress of those other positions out and help them. And, we're going to see a much more efficient product on the field offensively. But yeah, we'll see once the pads come on. We're not going to really know. I want to see when the pads come on, Clowney go up against Icky. He's going to get worked. It's going to be a tough sledding, and hopefully he can battle through it, because Clowney's, one of the best to do it out there. So hopefully Icky can show that, he's up for the task and bounce back from last year. Before we get into the next group, I just want to ask you, since we haven't touched on it with training camp, what are your thoughts on the setup overall of the Charlotte training camp? Because that's obviously new for a lot of folks. They got a VIP section selling alcoholic drinks at the practices, which is definitely new. They didn't have that on Wofford. They had that thing pretty locked tight down at that college in Sparkle City. But just your thoughts with the overall setup. Obviously, we haven't been there, so it's hard for us to we're just going off of pictures at this point. But overall setup of training camp in Charlotte right now.
Yeah, from what I've seen in pictures, like you said, we haven't been there, but from what I've seen in pictures, it looks good. I like the stands that they built. I like that they're allowing recording. They weren't doing that in Spartanburg, at Wofford, and the drinks are cool. I'm going to be drinking when I'm there for sure. So,
well, I think we both are. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, and they're making you get tickets to enter, and I guess they're monitoring, how many people are there. So, the VIP section, awesome. I think they've made improvements. There's probably still some room to grow for sure, but they kind of built this pretty quickly, got things together, and I think it's good for the time frame they did it in, and I'm excited to get there and actually see it and have a strong opinion about it. But from what I've seen, it looks decent.
Yeah, I give credit to Carolina for getting it together, like you said, very quickly, because they didn't have a lot of time to do it. And the fields, from what I can tell, well, obviously they're grass, which is crazy. They're playing on grass in Charlotte. Can you believe it? Breaking news, throw a banner across the screen. Probably won't happen ever in that stadium, but grass fields, so it'll be nice to see. I'm sure they'll get beat up over the next couple of weeks, and by the time the Jets come to town for joint practices, that field's going to look like shit, I'm sure. But
Yeah.
hopefully not. Hopefully, yeah, I think the VIP section's cool. It sounds like they got enough room. I think folks need to learn. If you guys are listening to this, if you don't have tickets, still go to those practices, because people that got tickets aren't showing up, and there's walk-ins to be had. So if you don't have a ticket and you still want to go check them out, let's pack it. Let's, show some fans across the country that, we still support this team, and, show out even though they're just putrid these last couple of years. Cooling center, though. That cooling center, I get it. There's a couple of teams in the NFL across the NFL that have them. But, man, that looks like, I just pictured like Breaking Bad. They're like cooking up meth in that damn thing. That's what I got out of the little cooling shelter they had. It's cool. I think it's a good feature for the players, because it does get so hot in Charlotte. Not as hot as in Spartanburg probably, but it's good for them. But I just pictured Breaking Bad, like this like dumpy ass trailer thing. I don't know. What'd you think of the cooling center?
I thought it looked like something straight from like a prison. That's what I thought. It looked like something from a beer facility somewhere. But no, I agree. I think it's cool. I think they said they had it set at 20 degrees in the trailer itself. So, players.
Wow, they did that in front of the media. They're trying to impress.
Yeah, I'm sure. But yeah, I mean, I think it's a great addition. It does get really hot. I think today, it was like 90 degrees. So let them get in there, take a break, cool off, and then get back out. So yeah, hopefully that's one of the things they'll make some improvements on in the future, with at least the looks of it. We'll see, but I think it's a great addition to the practice facility.
All right, let's get back to the football now a little bit. And I wanted to pose this question to you because I feel like we haven't heard much about this guy coming into his second year, sophomore season. And it was kind of an up and down, like really most players on this team, really up and down first year for him. But Jonathan Mingo, and this is the question I thought of, was, do you think he's a lock for wide receiver 4? And people might think I'm crazy for asking that, but I'm just curious where you think he stacks up in that wide receiver room.
Yeah, I think I'm a little bullish on Mingo. I think people have been really harsh on him for his rookie season in the NFL. Under the same coaching staff Bryce Young was under, used out of position, not his natural spot on the football field as a wide receiver. Obviously wasn't receiving great coaching. I don't think that's in question at all. And on a team that was struggling all around, I think, in my opinion, Mingo had a down in an upward trajectory of the season. I wouldn't say it was up and down. I think, he started rough, and then towards the end of the year, really showed flashes of being a good wide receiver in this league. So I think under this new coaching staff, with a better offensive line, better weapons around him, where he's not trying to be the number 1 or number 2 receiver, I think he's going to show some flashes more often than he did last year. And I do think that, it's hard to say a lock for number 4, but I think he's going to be involved in this offense and be an integral part of it. So I think, he's got some competition. Terrace Marshall Jr., we've been seeing stuff about him. But, we hear stuff about him every offseason, it feels like, in Carolina. So with him, and then you got like the undrafted rookie Jalen Coker, who everybody's high on. I think there's some, and then David Moore, the wide receiver they signed this offseason, who has history with Canales. I think there's some competition, and Mingo's going to have to show it in training camp that he can be on the field, and I think he will. I still have high hopes for Mingo. I think they drafted him in the second round for a reason. I think he's got every tool that he needs to be a good wide receiver in this league, and I think he's going to put it together this year, and I think he's going to surprise a lot of people. So I wouldn't be comfortable saying he's a lock no matter what for wide receiver 4, but I think if he's not 4 to start the year, he will move up through the depth chart and become that by the end of the year.
I think he's a lock. I do. I think he might have gone quietly in this offseason, but I do think there's chemistry built from last year, and there's a lot of room for growth out of him. And I think, he has the potential to be a pretty decent receiver. It's just, can he put it all together? And I think that connection he had with Bryce Young last year just doesn't go away. So I do think, TMJ, you might have heard a little bit of chatter about him, but have you really heard chatter about him in the regular season? So I do think, just based off of that connection, and also, I mean, they drafted this guy high, and I get it. I guess you can say it's a new regime, and Canales has no ties to him, but Dan Morgan was part of that front office that made the decision, whether you want to agree with it or not. And I do think they want to, see what they got in him. So I do think at the end of the day, he will be wide receiver 4. And then beyond that, I'm curious to see kind of where it shakes out. I think ISM could really ascend.
Didn't even mention
James, his return ability. And I also think I don't know, it just seems like he provides some sort of spark or energy to this team. It's very similar to Sam Franklin. Whenever he's just on the field, like he's just so, I don't know, he's electric with the ball in his hands too when he gets the opportunity. So I'm curious to see how his growth, because Canales is coming in this with a fresh set of eyes. So what is he going to see? And ISM, obviously TMJ. You got guys like David Moore, that's known Canales' offense from Seattle and obviously in Tampa Bay, and David Moore got some playing time last year with the Bucs, even in the playoffs. So I think, I'll be curious to see how many wide receivers they actually carry on the team. And then I think you're going to see some of these guys too on the practice squad that I'm sure they're going to call up, because we all know about injuries in this league. So, but yeah, just going back to Mingo, I think he's got a pretty good shot at that 4 spot. And, I don't think he'll break into that top 3. I think obviously they brought in Johnson for a reason, and he's already got a pretty good connection with Bryce Young. And then they traded up for Leggett, and they really like him. And I think that sky's the limit for him. The guy's a physical specimen. He's got really good speed, and I really hope, Bryce Young and him can build that connection, because they really didn't get to work much in minicamp because he was out with the hamstring. So they got a lot of catching up to do, but I think they'll get there hopefully, and build. And this offense won't you won't see, you'll see wide receivers actually open this year, which will be a good change of pace.
Be so nice.
Let's talk about the running back room. Looks like Miles Sanders got some playing time today, a pretty decent amount. Looks like Chuba Hubbard obviously got playing time. What do you think about this, how they stack up across the board? Obviously, Jonathan Brooks is out. News this week, he's starting the training camp on the active non-football injury list. He's coming off the torn ACL that he had in November. And but he can be activated at any time. So what are your thoughts? I guess let's start with Jonathan Brooks, because I know it's been a while since we really talked. And since we're going live tonight and got some folks in here, what were your thoughts on the Brooks, pick? And then what are your thoughts on this running back room right now, currently, with obviously him out?
Yeah, starting with Brooks, I love the pick, and I think they picked him for a reason. So I'll get into that in a minute. But obviously, super talented out of Texas, the best running back in the draft. It was a very surprising pick. I was not expecting it whatsoever, and I was excited when they did it. People can argue that maybe they should have went center, maybe they should have went another position there, but they selected him for a reason, and I'm excited about it whenever he is healthy and able to get back on the field. I think he's a true 3-down running back. Can catch the ball in the backfield, can run between the tackles, can run outside the tackles. A bigger guy with speed. I think he's a running back that's going to grow with Bryce and be a formidable duo for a quarterback and running back in the NFC South and in the NFL as well. So I think that there are reservations from this front office and this coaching staff on Chuba Hubbard being a 3-down running back. And I think I have reservations about it as well. I think Chuba Hubbard is a really good running back too, and I think he's a serviceable running back one. I think last year Chuba was one of the few bright spots in this offense. So not taking away from that, I think Chuba has struggled throughout his career in being that receiving threat out of the backfield. I think he's struggled with blitz pickups. I think he's been great running the ball downhill, a north and south runner. He's not the elusive back that's going to make people miss and be that home run threat, which I think Brooks is going to be. But I think with a 1-2 punch of Brooks and Chuba mixing Miles Sanders in, because I think Miles Sanders is that three of the three. I think it's a really good running back room. I think Brooks is going to be super surprising for people when he hits the field, and they're really going to understand why he was the second round pick and a surprising pick for Carolina. I think he just brings so much versatility as that true running back 1-3 down back that can be counted on when you need it. So I would say Brooks 1 when he's healthy, Chuba 2, and then Miles Sanders 3. And I think that's a good running back room. I think it provides a lot of versatility, a lot of maybe Miles Sanders is you bring him on third down, third and long, and he's the receiving back. Or I think that's more of his specialty. But looks like from camp, from today at least, he had some really good runs. So maybe with the new guard additions and an improved coaching staff and offensive line, then maybe he finds his footing and kind of surprises people this year. But last year was just so disappointing. I don't know if I trust that at all. Being one of the first paid running backs in free agency and a decent contract for a running back, and then having the year that he did was disappointing for sure, to say the least. So Chuba stepped up, and that's why Chuba is kind of a lead dog right now. But I think this coaching staff really does like Jonathan Brooks. That's why they selected him in the second round. Again, I think there's reservations in regards to Chuba being that true 3-down back. And I think when Brooks steps on the field, it's his job to lose.
Yeah, I like the running back room. I think it's pretty stacked at this point. I think Chuba proved last year he could carry the guard. Obviously, Canales really liked Brooks, and that's why they got him in the second round. And you see the excitement in the blueprint videos of him when they drafted him. So I'm excited to see when he gets on the field, and I think that's going to provide a boost for the offense. But I also do like Hubbard. I thought he played really well last year. I'm not, I wasn't too big of a fan of Sanders. I never really have been with him in Philly. I really wanted them to keep the guy that was escaping me already around, that they let Foreman, that they let go to Chicago. I really was hoping he would stick around, but I think there's, you paid Sanders, so you can't really. It'd be tough. It'd be a tough pill to swallow to cut him. And Brooks is coming off injury, so you don't know when he's going to be back. I don't hate Sanders as the second, because I do think in a different offense he can maybe thrive in a Canales, a more run heavy offense. So we'll see what happens. Yeah. Maybe he has a resurgence from last year in Frank Reich's ragtag of a fucking offense. I mean, it was pitiful. It really was. Yeah. So if you're gonna give people a pass in the offense, you got to give some of these guys who we didn't like either a pass slightly as well, because, and I get it, they paid Sanders a lot of money. I'm not saying give the guy a pass because he had a shitty season, but he gets a little something when he had a awful offensive coordinator last year and really head coach. So
that's fair.
Let's see what he can do in this Canales run offense, and see if he can carve out a role like in Tampa Bay with their backup. And they went with White a lot, but they had some tandems in there where they would bring in, and you saw that in the playoffs a little bit too. So I don't know. I'm not completely shut the door on Sanders. You might as well see what he's got. And they also have Penny on the roster too. Like that guy, he obviously knows Canales as well from Seattle. Obviously a pretty big stature dude. He's a big specimen as well in that backfield. So we haven't really heard much about him. And we'll see kind of how his role plays out. He might just be there until I think personally he's just there until Brooks comes back, and once Brooks is ready, I don't think we see Penny anymore, to be honest with you. But we'll see. We'll see how it shakes out. I do think that running back room though is fairly deep once Brooks comes back healthy. I mean, he was regarded as the best running back in the draft, and he showed that at Texas. The guy could do it all. Like you said, I think he can play all downs, and catch the ball in the backfield. He's elusive as hell. He's got a nice spin move. Just from some of the games I watched last year, I really liked him. That was one of the players I highlighted this past season. We talked about leading up to the draft. So I do like the Brooks decision. Could they have, we discussed this a little bit with two fans in the stands last week off the recording or the live stream we did, but could they have went center at that second pick in the pick 39 or whenever I know they traded back a little bit there, but there was a couple centers out there they could have maybe went after. I guess you could argue with that all day long, but they did what they did, and I think Brooks is going to be a nice, feature for Bryce Young, not only in the run game but also an outlet when things break down. So let's go to Bryce Young. Let's talk about it, because you're going to get the comparisons. We already got, I think I don't know if you saw this video the other day, and I always, when I can have the chance to talk shit about Bears fans, I'm gonna. But they had a video of some young kids. I think they were wearing like Bryce Young camp shirts or something from one of his camps that he hosted, and Caleb Williams signed the shirt, and everyone was like, "Oh, he signed Bryce Young's shirt or whatever." I was like, "Whatever. Stay in Chicago. You guys will remain Green Bay, and right now Detroit's, that's their division. Chicago ain't touching that shit at all." So we'll see how Caleb, plays this year. I'm not a big fan of him. I think he's arrogant as hell. Not my style for at the QB position. He's just rubbed me the wrong way. So, but yeah, enough about Chicago. But let's talk about Bryce Young a little bit here. And I don't even remember how I posed this. I don't know if this is fair. I might get eaten up for this. But can Bryce Young be the guy in Carolina? Obviously, we know the stats from last year. We know what he was in. But can he be the franchise, the future this team needs? And I'll just leave you to that. I'll give you the floor.
Yeah, I think the answer is unequivocally 100% without a doubt. Yes, he can be the guy. I think Bryce Young has every single intangible trait. Anything you want to see from a quarterback, Bryce Young has that. People talk about his size. Last year was sacked, I don't know how many times, but was like 62 or 66 times he was sacked. Missed one game, playing behind the worst offensive line in the league. I think Bryce Young, squashed those questions about can he last in the NFL with his stature. Played at Alabama against really good competition. Obviously, a lot of those guys he played against are in the NFL. I think those questions in the first place were kind of dumb, but it is what it is. I think he answered those questions. I think Bryce Young, coming out of college, the talk about him was, him being a mental savant, the brain, the processing. And I think, last year was a sum of all of the bad parts in Carolina from the coaching staff. I mean, the GM fired, the coaching staff, the offensive line, and then, of course, coming down to Bryce Young. And Bryce Young took a lot of the blunt of those blows from the media and Bears fans and some Panthers fans. And I think taking that out of context and putting it all on Bryce Young is just not fair, because we all know, fans of football know, true fans, that without an offensive line, without protection, without wide receivers getting open, there's not much a quarterback can do. I don't know if there was a quarterback last year that you could have put in Bryce Young's position and he would have succeeded, outside of maybe like Patrick Mahomes, the best quarterback in the league. So I think, without a doubt, Bryce Young can be the guy. I think he will be the guy. I think he's going to improve under Canales based off of Canales' history of work, his resume. which we've talked about 100 times, his work with Geno Smith and his work with Baker, and hearing Baker talk about, Dave Canales be that quote unquote optimist bully. And I think their personalities mesh so well together, Bryce Young's and Dave Canales. I think they're similar when it comes to the personality. And I think, he's a perfect match. Like I said on Two Fans in the Stand, I don't know if they could have hired a better head coach for Bryce Young than Canales with just matching personalities and being that optimist that he is. And I think Bryce Young needs that. I think Bryce Young is as well. I think he's pretty optimistic. He's never like too down on himself or too high. He's very just mellow, and I think that's exactly what you need in a quarterback in the NFL. I think with the addition of Deontay Johnson, we're gonna and Xavier Legette, I think we're gonna see strides this year. Another year, I think last year's a learning lesson for Bryce Young. I think he'll be the first to tell you that he needed to be better. There were some plays that were on him, and I'm not going to run from that. Like we saw some missed deep balls, we saw some missed throws, some interceptions, but I think when you're in the mix of everything that was going on last season, I don't blame him for struggling, even when things were open or things were there on the field. So I think I have full confidence in Bryce Young. I do think he was the right pick. I think he's going to be I think he's going to be the best quarterback for Carolina moving forward. I didn't buy his jersey for no reason. Like I really do believe in the guy. And I think with an improved offensive line and improved weapons, he's going to show people that, he was the right pick. And I think me and you both are ready to pull those receipts and retweet some of the things that we've got saved.
They're in the bookmarks, baby.
In the bookmarks. We're ready, man, because people have done nothing but shit on him for a year and a half, and I'm so ready to just call them out and see them switch up. Oh, Bryce Young's the guy. Yeah, I knew it was just a bad year last year, and these are the people that are saying he's a bust after year one under everything I just talked about. So yeah, unequivocally, yes, he can be the guy.
Yeah, I mean, I believe in him 100%. If you've watched our show at all, you know that, we were the Bryce believers from the get-go, and I'm going to stand behind that just from what I watched in his college tape, and I do think it was a complete shit show last year. But I'll say this, you can take the 5'10" and the slight frame and shove it up your ass, because he proved last year that he can take a hit in the NFL. And it didn't come to a surprise to anyone who watched him in college, because I remember numerous times we talked about it. Go pull up the Tennessee game when they were playing, Alabama was playing Tennessee, and Bryce Young get lit up a couple times. Go watch some of those games where he got beat up, and the guy got right back up and, was slinging it. So he proved that last year. That was the biggest knock on him. And shout out, Bryson, you said it too. You mentioned him, but Bland and Edgar are in the chat. We appreciate you guys listening, and Carter as well. Thank you guys so much. But yeah, I totally believe in Bryce Young, and I think he was in a really bad situation last year. Now, he doesn't get a free pass though either. I think he had an awful season, and I think there are things that he needs to work on and things that the coaching staff let him get away with last year, aka his footwork, which he sounds like clearly is working on this, off season and with Canales, and Canales is very focused on the details, and, you do your 1 of 11. That's his big, talking point. Don't do too much. Just do what we want you to do. And that's it. And everything else will fall into place. And I think that approach for Bryce has helped, but I also do, think that Canales has taken a hard approach and said, like, these are the things, like, we see here, like, your footwork isn't great. We need to work on that. I think that was disregarded last year, by that great piece that Joe Person put out with The Athletic that just dropped a bombshell on everything that was going on behind the scenes with the organization last year. So yeah, I do think, they put, some good pieces around Bryce this offseason, went out, fixed that interior, kind of took that approach of, the Drew Brees model, build up this nice big, stout offensive lineman up the middle, especially with him being a shorter quarterback, and the importance of the middle of the offensive line. But I do have reservations about Icky. I don't know if Icky's the guy, and that concerns the hell out of me. I'm I'm out on Icky until he proves me otherwise, that he can hold down that left side, because those other guys can do so much. If you got guys coming free, it's only going to shrink Bryce's timing and the decisions he needs to make quickly. But I agree with you. I think Canales was a good hire for him. Carolina didn't have a ton of options, so I mean they went with the guy that was the quote unquote the offensive guru, and helped I would say rebuild Baker and helped rebuild and bring back Geno Smith. And I think it's going to be good for Bryce. And then, Deontay Johnson, I think that was a very underrated trade by Dan Morgan. I don't give him props very often, but I think that was a good move by him. Get rid of a guy that you were going to cut in Dante Jackson anyway, and you got, a receiver that, the biggest asset of his game was separation, and that was the worst part of the wide receivers last year. So that was a plus on that side of the ball. So yeah, I mean, I think they've done some things. They obviously need to do more, and we'll see how it shakes out. But I think unequivocally, like you said, I think Bryce Young can do this thing, and I think he can turn it around. I think Cam Newton, I was watching his show before we got on your 4th and 1, and a fan had asked, what do you think's more likely to happen this year? And we don't have to get into the Stroud debate, but they said, you think CJ Stroud has a sophomore slump, or Bryce Young is a top 16 quarterback in the NFL? And I'll just stick to the back half of that question. Do you think Bryce Young can be a top 16 quarterback this year and bounce back from his probably one of the worst rookie seasons ever for a QB?
Yeah, I think he can be, but that's not my expectation. I don't expect him to make a jump like that. I think, like you mentioned, there's a lot of ifs. What ifs on this offensive line at center and left tackle? Is Thielen going to take a step back? He's not getting any younger. How is Leggett going to look coming into a rookie season with some question marks about his abilities? I mean, there were some question marks, and Deontay Johnson, who is a great separator at wide receiver, but there were rumblings about his behaviors in the locker room, and the Steelers, who have a great history of drafting receivers and developing them, moving on from him for a 7th round pick in Dante Jackson. I think there's a lot of what ifs, but I think if everything falls into place and the offensive line is good and these receivers are good as well, the tight end group takes a step forward, Jatavion Sanders is a good player, and Jonathan Brooks gets on the field, then I think, he could be a top 16 quarterback, and somebody that we really do take a leap forward, not just a step. But I think progress is all I want to see. So last year, I mean, you can argue probably one of the worst quarterbacks in the league based off of his circumstances, but if he jumped forward to a top 20 quarterback, if he was 19, 20, 21, 22, I would be happy with that, because it's progress. It would lead to more wins. I don't know how much more than 2, but it would lead to eventually more wins. And I think the progress is all I need to see. And I truly believe that I will see progress.
Yeah, and I just want to, for folks that are tuning in, we got a lot of people out there. We do appreciate the support, but if you guys have not subscribed on our YouTube, while I have you here live, please do it. Hit the button. We want to keep increasing that subscriptions from all of you. So please subscribe to this channel. We do appreciate all the support. Let's go to the defense, Bryson. We've talked a lot about the offense. Let's talk about defense, because there's some things happening. Carolina is bringing in some folks. And before we get into that, before we talk about some of the visits that are coming up, I just want to get your overall sense of what you think of the defense right now. And let's start with the front 7 here and your expectations for them. I'm talking edge. I'm talking interior defense line. I'm talking about the linebackers, that group. I know you're high on the linebackers, so let's talk about the front 7. What are your expectations this year? Because Carolina lost a lot. 5 starters from this past season. One of your guys, Brian Burns, Frankie Louvu, Jeremy Chin, There's a couple others I'm escaping me, but those guys, what do you think they did to bring in and try to you know regroup from what they lost, and some of the guys they drafted as well?
Yeah, I think the addition of Jadeveon Clowney was astronomical. It was important. They had to do it, and I'm glad they got the job done in signing him to Carolina, bringing him home, and coming off one of his best years in the NFL. I think he's going to be one of the most important players on that defense, and I think he's going to be really good. Coming from a great system in Baltimore, but I think he's going to bring a lot of veteran leadership and pressure and sacks. So that was probably one of the most important additions to the defense this offseason. I think, of course, opposite of him on the other side of the edge, it's a big question mark. DJ Wonnum's injured, don't know when he's going to be back. Like you mentioned, they didn't bring in some guys for workouts. I don't know what it's going to look like there. They talked about DJ Johnson today. I think Dan Morgan did. I know you have some dislike towards Mr. Johnson, but he what is it? Hey, if we're going off what you said, rookie year, you got to give him some slack.
Well, the guy's like 30 fucking years old already. It's like, holy shit.
Oh man. So yeah, the edge is question mark. Jadeveon Clowney isn't getting any younger for sure. DJ Wonnum had 8 sacks last year, but how much of that was Danielle Hunter getting double teamed and him doing cleanup duty? But we'll see what happens there. I think the interior of the offensive line is one of the strongest positional groups on this team. You have Derek Brown, who's a top 5 defensive tackle. They bring in Ashawn Robinson. They have Shai Tuttle, drafted Cremedi. I think that room is a lot better than it was last year. I think Ashawn Robinson is going to really improve the run game or the run defense. And then, of course, Derek Brown. I think those two guys are going to demand a lot of attention when they are lined up together. So, and of course, Clowney is as well. So maybe Wonnum is still on cleanup duty, and that helps him get those 8 sacks again, or possibly more. But yeah, I think the interior is pretty set. And then, like you mentioned, the linebackers. I'm really high on Josie Jewell. I love the signing. I think he is in the perfect scheme. He showed it. He had his best year as a linebacker in the NFL under Evero. I think he comes in. He's an immediate leader. We've seen from the blueprint his relationship with Shaq Thompson. I think Shaq Thompson was playing some of his best football in his career last year before he got injured. And I think you bring in guys like Trevin Wallace, the rookie, who is just a freak athlete who's probably a little raw at this point, but brings some speed to that linebacker room. I really do like that group. So, yeah, I think my expectations for the front seven probably take maybe a step back from last year, just based off of the losing Brian Burns and losing Frankie Louvu and losing Jeremy Chin, who really didn't have a big role but was a good player. I just don't think the coaching staff really could figure out where to put him, which doesn't surprise me with the amount of bad decisions that we saw from that staff. But I still think it's going to be a formidable, at least decent defense. And I think under Evero, who is one of the best defensive coordinators in the NFL, I don't think anybody can argue that. I think he's going to work his magic, and I think it's going to be a group that isn't as bad as we are expecting. I think everybody's expecting to take a major step back, but I don't think they will. If they stay healthy, I think we'll see maybe a little bit of a step back, but I think there's still going to be a defense that can get some stops, that can force turnovers, and I think people are going to be a little bit surprised about that.
Yeah, I'm really holding out hope that Clowney is just he's a menace. Like, just plays out of his mind this year. 10 sacks, like, dominates, one of his best years ever at 30 plus years of age. Clowney's he talked about this in Blueprint, I believe, probably about a month or two ago now. And I mentioned this on two fans in the stands last week. Was he's playing in a very similar system that he played in Houston. So I think that's an advantage for him. He's going to work matchups. He's going to, they're going to find mismatches for him, and that's kind of what they did in Houston when he was first drafted there. And the only fallback to that is Wanham is out, and Wanham was supposed to be the number 2 guy, the guy on the other side of the line from him, and he's not there right now. And we don't know when he's coming back. They are keeping this. Is he going to be ready by week 1? They don't know. Is he going to be ready for training camp? They don't know. So that uneasiness scares the hell out of me. And then we find out they're bringing in 3 guys. So you know what that tells me? Wanham is not seeing the field anytime soon. And they're in, I don't know if you want to say panic mode, and are bringing in guys right now. We'll talk about them in a little bit here, but I just want to give you my take on the front 7. Like you said a little bit, I think Wanham rode the coattails of Hunter. And, he had some garbage time sacks. I saw a couple of them against Justin Fields. We all know what the Bears offensive line was. Just a complete disaster. So he made a lot of his money coming, going up against Chicago. So, can he do that, and can he sustain that? I know he had the 8 sacks last year. So those are my 2 biggest questions. And then the guys behind them, Chason, I'm just not buying it. I want to see it. I hope it happens, but this just feels like another, pipe dream project. Carolina's trying to reclaim some guy who didn't pan out in Jacksonville, was a first round pick, didn't live up to the, where he was picked at, didn't have a lot of sacks. I take a lot of stock in, Jacksonville fans. They watch their games. They see this guy play day in and day out. We're not seeing this shit. I ain't buying anyone that said that they went out and watched every game Chason played in. The guy was not very good, according to their fans, and I'm going to put some stock into that. I do. I know they watched the game. So until I see him prove it, he said, I think he said, Carolina got a steal, and don't be sold out on him. Okay, then show it up in the game. Show up for voluntary workouts, which he didn't. Show up to some of this stuff. You're in a prove it year. Let's see it. Like, let's see the work. So I'm out on him until I see it otherwise. And then you mentioned DJ Johnson. We are day 1 of camp. Where's DJ Johnson today? Working out on the sideline. Who was a guy, Dan Morgan, which foolishly fell on the sword for? Why would you do that? Foolishly fell on the sword and said fans are sleeping on DJ Johnson. He could have pushed it off. He could have said this was Scott Fitter's draft pick. He could have shut it. He couldn't have said anyone we're sleeping on the edge group. He could have said you're sleeping on a lot of guys. He didn't have to name them. He chose to name DJ Johnson. If he is going to own that pick now, he is going to own that pick. And when he could have to Bryson, he could have went like this, just dusted his hands off and let that go. He chose to fall on the sword for him. So, I mean, DJ Johnson better show up because, apparently we're sleeping on him. So another guy. And then we have Barno who's out coming off of a major injury. So, yeah, this edge group, I think, is the most worrisome for me outside of secondary right now, barring a serious injury. And we'll talk about that in a little bit with JC Horn, him staying healthy this year. But yeah, this edge group, it scares me. It really does. There's a lot of guys out, and we haven't even hit day 2 of training camp. So let's talk about, though, the guys that they're bringing in, because obviously, Carolina, there is some concern there. And we got to give our boy Mike K. We've had him on numerous times on this show, coming in with the goods. And these are the couple of guys that they brought in, or they're bringing in. So we have Carl Lawson. It sounds like a guy that we've talked about a lot on this show, Bryce. I know, and both of us were, pretty big fans of Yannick Ngakoue. And then you also have the guy that, has played on this team. He was here last year. It was supposed to be, kind of Marquise Haynes' year last year, it seemed like, coming into training camp. That's what we were all talking about. And, he's coming off, he battled a lot of injuries this past season. So they're bringing all three of these guys in. I just wanted to get your thoughts on, who do you like out of this group? And what value can they add for this edge group that's really beat up besides Clowney right now?
Yeah, I think adding any of these guys would be a positive for a group that's super thin, like you say. Um, Carl Lawson, I think, I know the name. I know he's got history with the Bengals and the Jets. Not super familiar how his last season went with the Jets, but I think adding anyone with his caliber of name and potential would be beneficial in a room that really doesn't have very many names besides Clowney. And then, like you mentioned, Yannick Ngakoue, last season, we were pretty high on him coming in. I think he had kind of a disappointing season in Chicago, but again, a player that has that name and that recognition and has the ability to get to the quarterback, and I think would be a great addition to this room. But honestly, I think I like Marquise Haynes the best out of the three. I think he's battled some injuries for sure in Carolina, which unfortunately has kind of derailed his career here. But I believe he's the youngest of the three. I think he's got what it takes to be an effective edge rusher. He's got that speed. And I think that might be what we need on this defensive line, because Clowney's not a burner. I don't think either of these two other guys are either. I think if Marquise Haynes could stay healthy, he could really challenge Watson for that opposite spot. And maybe this is this year that he's supposed to come on and really be that guy. So I would be happy with any of the three, but I would like Marquise Haynes the best.
Yeah, we'll get to some of our comments just here in a little bit, but just kind of going through these guys, and then I will kind of want to talk about the interior D-line a little bit here. I know you touched on it. But Bryson, I'll be honest, I was looking these guys up before we got on here, and I'm like, this is a fucking walking wounded. I mean, all three of these guys, which is crazy. So I love Yannick. I was a big fan of Yannick when he was with Frank Reich in Indy. It sounds like he's not the typical mold for, what Evero likes in his edge rushers, and he would probably be not as great against the run, but he gets sacks. But Yannick's coming off a broken ankle. Okay. Carl Lawson dealt with back injuries in New York last year, and that's why he didn't play much. And Marquise had back issues last year with Carolina. So like all three of these guys are coming off of, they're either battling injuries or, Yannick's coming off a major injury. And Yannick, I think he actually just went, I think he tried out with Miami maybe, and Miami ended up going with Emmanuel Ogbah over him. So I'm wondering if his health came back and it wasn't great. So that's a red flag there for me. Edgar mentioned Carl Lawson kind of fitting that threshold at edge. I'd be more inclined to him over Haynes just based off of his track record in the past, and some of the sack numbers and pressures he's put up is a little bit better than Haynes. I think Haynes obviously has a leg up because he's got the familiarity, but is the guy healthy? And that's the question with all these guys. Which one is the healthiest? And I think that might be who they end up going with on just off their, health records, because all three of these guys have been dealing with injuries, which that's literally what this room, what they're, struggling to find is someone who can actually be in there and be. But I do think there's value with Carl Lawson and his experience and veteran, his leadership for some of these younger guys that they like a DJ Johnson, like a Jason who's trying to bounce back. So I think that can add some value. And I also think Yannick too has some veteran leadership because he's been also in the league too. So if I had to pick anyone, I'd probably go with Carl Lawson, going back on what, I said last year with Yannick, because the guy's coming off like a major ankle surgery, which is like, what are we doing here? But I mean, maybe the guy's healthy. I don't know. So we'll see how it shakes out. But I just want to touch on the interior because we talked about this last week with the guys with 2 fans in the stands, and this interior defensive line. And Bryson, you talked about this, so I'm just echoing this a little bit. This interior defensive line should take a major step this year. Like, this is what do you want to call it? The best position group on this defense, I personally think.
Yeah.
Between A'Shawn Robinson and Derek Brown, who is the best player on the team right now, teams will no longer be able to run down our throats on defense, which I can't tell you the last time that it's been a while. Teams would run at will when they wanted to on this team. And that was always something Carolina struggled with. And I think for the first time this year, barring an injury, they are going to be set in that interior. And I think, and I talked about this last week, I really think it's going to help Shy Tuttle out and ease some pressure on him and make him a better player. And we're going to get the Shy Tuttle in his best years when he was in New Orleans. And that's what I'm excited about. And I think Derek Brown, Robinson's also going to help Derek Brown out greatly too, because he's going to ease a little bit of pressure. Because, I mean, have you seen Robinson in the blueprint videos? The guy is fucking massive. I mean, he is huge. And I don't know. I'm just excited for the interior defensive line. I think that's going to help. And I also think it's going to help, it's going to help the edge rushers out a little bit. So maybe that's where we see, an extended hand from, a Derek Brown and a A'Shawn Robinson for obviously Clowney. I don't know how much really help he needs, but that's going to, it's going to be hard to double Derek Brown and, you got Clowney as well. Are you going to double him? Or are you going to double Derek Brown? You also got Robin. So there's positives there. So that's like the Clowney signing was huge. Can you imagine if Carolina didn't get Clowney? Like, I remember it was, do they go Chase Young or Clowney? That was like the whole conversation this past offseason. Can you imagine if they didn't get either of the guys? We're sitting here with DJ Wanham, Chason, and DJ Johnson. And, maybe they would have went edge in the draft then. But it's just like, I can't even think what they would have done if they didn't get Clowney. It's crazy.
Would have been bad news, for sure.
All right, let's talk about the secondary, because that was another group of concern, I feel like, for a lot of people as well. And what are your thoughts? I know there's a couple of guys that you like that, maybe not a lot of people are talking about right now. So what is your thoughts on the secondary as a whole and just your overall expectations for them going into training camp?
Yeah, I think to start with the safeties, bringing in Fuller, Xavier Woods, bringing in a guy like a Nick Scott. I think the safety room is pretty set and a decent group. I would say they're probably the second best on the defensive roster as far as positional groups. So no really concerns there. But as far as the corners go, they brought in Dane Jackson to be the cornerback too. I think there's going to be an open competition for that spot. They did pay him to play as the cornerback too, but I think a guy I really like a lot, Deshaun Jameson, who came in last year, first start against Justin Jefferson, played really well against arguably the best wide receiver in the league. I think he's got a lot of potential. Obviously, just going to continue to grow as a player in the league. Signed him off the practice squad, I think, with the 49ers, and a couple weeks later was playing really good defense versus Justin Jefferson, like I said. So I like him a lot. I think he's going to compete for that spot. And you got other guys, like we've heard the coaching staff is really high on DiCaprio Boodle. I think Mike Kay told us that. So I think obviously the room looks a little different if J.C. Horn goes down. We're probably grasping at straws for that position, and it's going to be a struggle for sure. Unless they bring in another veteran like Gilmore, which hopefully that they can swing. But I mean, at this point, I've kind of lost hope on that. But I think with J.C. Horn and then Dane Jackson or Jameson or Boodle, opposite of him, and of course you got guys like Troy Hill and Chow Smith Wade in the nickel. I think it's a decent cornerback room. It definitely does lack depth, but I'm excited for the potential of Dane Jackson because Dan Morgan was really high on him in Buffalo. I think he really aided in them drafting him, and then Buffalo. He saw some playing time last year as a starter, not as much as you would hope for your potential cornerback too. But when he was on the field, I think I would think his tape shows that he was pretty decent and, performed to a high enough level to potentially, get a full-time cornerback to role on the team. So I think that there's going to be a lot of competition in that room, especially for that 2 spot. And I think Jameson may surprise some people and win it out, but I think the team is really looking at Dane Jackson for that number 2 spot, and we'll see how it plays out. But I think they need to stay healthy. That's the number one concern there. If they're not healthy, we have some real issues in Carolina because we got guys covering some of the best receivers in the league. Even in the NFC South, you got Drake London, Mike Evans, and what's his name with New Orleans. Chris Olave. I mean, even in the NFC South that we're going to be playing these teams 2 times a year, these receivers are good. They're really good. And I think without J.C. Horn, you have some concerns there. So the group definitely lacks depth, but I think if healthy, that they can perform up to expectations, I believe.
Yeah, I think it's the biggest mystery is Dane Jackson. What can this guy do? He hasn't played 17 games as a starter. He's filled in a couple times and he's done, a decent job, it sounds like, in Buffalo during those times, but can he do it for a full season? And can he go up, like you said? Can he go up again? Are you going to trust him going against a Chris Olave or a Chris Godwin and, holding his own? And that is the big question mark. No one knows that. We're not going to know that until preseason and regular season starts. So, and I think fans are a little hesitant on that. And you should be. I mean, the guy was a 7th round pick. We don't know if this guy, we can trust Dan Morgan because it's Dan Morgan's guy, but we're not going to know until this guy, he sees the field and he starts playing against some of these dudes. So I think the uncertainty there is scary. I do like Troy Hill as another guy we wanted back this offseason. I'm glad they brought him back. I don't know a whole hell of a lot about Smith Wade. I know he had a decent Senior Bowl, and that's kind of how he rose up at that nickel spot. He really hadn't played nickel much in college, and then he did a really nice job at the Senior Bowl, and that's kind of how he rose up. But then the big question mark too is J.C. Horn. Can this guy stay available? And that will always be the biggest question. If he goes down, it could get hairy, kind of like last year. But, like you said, Boodle filled in, decently this past year. Jameson filled in well until he got hurt. So, these guys have had starting reps under their belt now, which is nice. But there's just still not that number 2 is still unknown. And it sounds like it's Dane Jackson's job. And, Dan Morgan, even in his presser this week, spoke very highly of him. But, Dan Morgan, I know everyone in the chat's going to agree with me. Go out your front door and knock on your neighbor Gilmore's door and give him a ring because we'd like to see him back in Carolina. I don't know where he's at. It sounds like, from what I was told, from my little sources I got, that, Gilmore is not in any rush whatsoever, and he does not want to be in training camp, and he'll probably show up right before the season starts if he's going to sign with the team. So we'll see what happens. I think he's going to play the long game, and he obviously probably wants money and probably wants to play with a winner. So Carolina might not be there, but Dan Morgan's his neighbor, Clowney, South Carolina. Maybe Leggett can pull some strings. I don't know. Maybe they can get some maybe they can offer him a back together or an event there in Columbia, South Carolina, where his family's at. But no, I mean, I know people want that, but it sounds like they're comfortable with Dane Jackson at this point. I just kind of wanted to go back quickly. Just shout out to Zach Rappaport for putting this. I didn't know this. I just found this out. But Carolina is also bringing in Kimoko Tere. I hope I'm saying that right. If I'm not, I am not great at pronouncing names, but the guy was a former second round pick with the Colts. He just recently put out a workout video, and it sounds like he might or he's going to be working out with Carolina as well. So Carolina clearly has some concern with that edge position. There's no doubt about it. They're bringing all these guys in. So no matter what they say in the press conference, it's a bunch of bullshit. They're worried about that position 100%. But while we have everyone in here, a bunch of our viewers are going up. We love to see it. We appreciate your guys' support. Please, if you do not subscribe to our YouTube page, I'm going to keep pushing it. Please hit that subscribe button on YouTube. We love all your guys' support, and we'll continue on with this conversation right now. But I just had to do a little bit of housekeeping there. Ryson, two fans in the stands had this question, and I thought it was a good one. Let's pick one on offense, one on defense. I think really give you a heads up on that, but that's kind of where we're looking at. Drafted or undrafted, which rookie could have an impact year one in the league for Carolina?
Yeah, I think the easy 1 and 2 on offense is Leggett and Brooks. But I really think Brooks is going to surprise people. I mean, obviously, he came in highly touted. I think pretty consensus, the number one running back in the draft. If he wasn't injured, he might have been a first-round pick. I think once he hits the field, it's going to open up so many possibilities for this offense moving forward. Like we mentioned earlier, a 3-down running back who can be a receiving threat, who can run between and outside the tackles. I think he's the guy moving forward, bringing back some of that Jonathan Stewart, some of that Angelo Williams, some of that, not as close, but some of that Christian McCaffrey-esque style of running back. So I think he's going to be an instant impact as soon as he hits the field. And obviously Leggett speaks for himself. On defense, it's a little harder. They drafted Trevin Wallace, the linebacker who out of Kentucky, which a lot of people thought was a reach when they drafted him. But Dan Morgan identified him. And like we mentioned on Two Fans in the Stand, like Dan Morgan, who has the record for most tackles in a Super Bowl in the history of the league, who has this pedigree of being a really, really, really good linebacker in college and in the NFL, goes out and identifies this guy and makes it a priority to draft him, whether it be a reach or not. I think Wallace plays with an edge. He's got speed, obviously, one of the faster linebackers in the draft. I think he's a little bit more of a project, but I think once he sees the field, he's going to make an impact for sure. He's got to work on his coverage abilities a little bit, but I think whether it be on special teams or on defense, once Wallace is ready, I think he's going to be a really good player in Carolina for a long time to come.
Yeah, I'm going to go – I'll start with defense because that's where you ended on. And I talked about this last week, but I think this Michael Barrett guy they got in the 7th round from Michigan, linebacker, I think special teams is going to play a more bigger role than people think with these new rule changes for the kickoff. And I think this guy could carve out a pretty nice role on special teams. And he was Michigan, one of the best defenses in college football last year, if not the best. And he was the all-time winningest player in Michigan football history. Was a tackle machine, and I feel like he could. He's not. It's a pretty loaded linebacker room at the top. Shaq Thompson and Jewell are obviously going to be the starters, and then they have Trevin Wallace as well. So I don't know how much of an impact this guy's going to have on defense, but when it comes to special teams, I think this guy could have a really nice role on that side. And, you got to look at guys like, Sam Franklin, who really made a name for himself on for this team, really. Like, this guy was, this fiery attitude, made his role on special teams, and then he slowly got opportunities at safety. So, like, that's kind of the role I see with this guy. Like, I think he can make a name for himself, and I think you can see him, kind of, slowly here and there, be thrown in on a third down when Shaq Thompson's, tired, whatever the case may be, but you could see him get an increased role. But I do think he could carve out something really nice. So just shout out, because the guys are in here, 2 fans in the stands. We took this question from y'all last week. I thought it was a good one. And you talked about it, Bryson, offensively. For me, I think it's Jonathan Brooks. I really do. I know Lee Gett was, the number 1 pick, but I just think how much Dave Canales plans to run on offense. And I think people are underestimating, and I'm going to warn everyone now, since, we got a couple hundred people in here. Carolina is going to run the ball when you don't want them to run the ball this year. It's going to happen. So get your crying, throw it out the damn window, go draft one of these running backs, because they're going to pound the hell out of the ball all season, and you're not going to like it at points. But that's what Dave Canales did last year in Tampa Bay, and you saw Tampa Bay fans bitch about it. And it's going to happen in Carolina. They're going to run the ball down teams' throats. That's what they're going to do. And I think Jonathan Brooks is going to have a major impact with that when he comes back healthy. I do think he's going to be the guy when he is healthy and ready to roll. And he's a Dave Canales guy. And that's whether you like Chuba or Miles Sanders or whoever you like, or Blackshear. Once Brooks is healthy, he is going to be the main dude. And it's just too damn bad. And I think he's gonna do great. I do. I think he was a good pickup, and I'm excited to see what he can do. Camp battles to watch. Let's talk about that. We didn't even touch on it. Zach mentioned this, is Tavion Sanders. We didn't talk about him. I don't know what to think of the tight end group, because they just never live up to the expectation. So it's just like, I forget about them half the time. I really do. I seriously, like, I've been hearing for like the past 3 years from everyone that Tremble was supposed to be the guy. And
chill out.
And I've heard, I haven't heard that Ian Thomas is supposed to be the guy. The guy's been trash. We all know that. The guy shouldn't be on the roster, but somehow he'll find a tight end screen this year and piss me off. But yeah, I mean, I forget about that tight end group and Sanders. And it sounds like right now, it just, from what I see, and I don't know if you agree with this, Bryson, but it seems like it's Tremble, Ian Thomas, and then Sanders below that on the depth chart. But who knows? I mean, maybe this guy will show up in preseason and really make a name for himself and cement himself above, some of those guys.
Yeah, I agree with that order in the depth chart currently. I am a big Tremble fan. I have been since he was drafted in Carolina. I think he's played with some pretty bad quarterbacks in his career in Carolina up to this point. And I think this season we're going to see a lot of improvement from him. I think he showed flashes, his athletic ability, his blocking ability, his catching ability, his run after the catch. I think he's a good tight end. I think he's going to show that this year. I am high on Jatavion Sanders as well. I've seen enough of Ian Thomas. I think he should be scooted down the depth chart a little bit, put him in there as like a swing tackle-esque tight end, blocking tight end. I don't think he should be getting targets at this point in his career. We've seen enough in Carolina, and I'm tired of it, just like you are. But Sanders, I think you watch the tape from Texas, and he's so consistent. He had some of the best hands in the draft for a tight end. He is a true pass catching threat at that position, which Carolina hasn't had for a while. So I think he's gonna etch out a role for himself on this team. Might take a while because, again, he's a rookie, and it's going to take time to learn this offense and get that comfortability with Bryce Young. But I think eventually he's going to be a really good player for this team as well. So, but camp battles to watch, I think, of course, tight ends, like we just talked about. We talked about the cornerbacks. Cornerback 2, Dane Jackson versus Deshaun Jameson versus Boodle versus whoever else they throw in there. Hopefully Gilmore at some point, but I don't think if Gilmore's on the team, it's not going to be much of a battle. But I think that position is going to be fun to watch. And then who's playing opposite edge of Clowney? I mean, they signed Bonham, right? We talked about it. He's not healthy. So who's it going to be? Any of these 4 guys they're bringing in for tryouts? Is it DJ Johnson? Are we sleeping on DJ Johnson? Like Dan Morgan said, like maybe he's worked his ass off this offseason, and
you're drinking the Kool-Aid. You're drinking the Kool-Aid.
He's quickly approaching retirement, according to Curtis. But I think he was a project. You slowly drafted DJ Johnson off of his size.
They panicked, dude. They panicked on that pick.
They did, and I think hopefully it'll pan out. But not a player I have high hopes on, just like you. But I'm not as harsh with DJ Johnson as you are. My God, I think you're ready to cut him today. But I think who's going to step up. You have an opportunity to really pan out or just take control of a starting position on this team opposite of Clowney. So who's coming in and day out, working their ass off to get that spot and to show this team show the NFL that you are a starting edge defender in this league and you can get to the quarterback. So I think there's a lot of positions we could talk about. I saw 2 fans in CJ in the chat talking about the kicker. Eddie Pinheiro versus the thicker kicker.
Yeah, steal my thunder. That's where I was going to go. Kickers need love, man. Like that's like one of the biggest ones, I think. And then I agree. I think Edge is the obvious outside of Clowney. Who is going to line up across the line from him? And I mean, I shouldn't say that. I mean, on the other side of the line from him. And it sounds like it's going to be a free agent because Carolina is in panic mode to get one because DJ Johnson's, sitting out day 1 with an illness. But kickers, like, is it Eddie P or is it thicker kicker? Mevis and Mevis, it sounded like didn't kick today. I think they're going to maybe alternate every day. So maybe we'll see Mevis tomorrow. Mevis, big dude. He reminds me, you don't watch this, might lose some people here, but Badgers had a massive kicker a couple years ago, Italian dude. I mean, the guy was like a linebacker and just fat kicker. And he reminds me of him. But he's got a leg. I mean, the guy, he's kicked a 60-yarder at Missouri. He's hit a couple 60-yarders, it sounds like, in mini camp. And I think that excites fans. That excites probably me. I mean, that excites me as well. Like, this guy can launch the shit out of it. And Eddie P can't do that. I'm still an Eddie P fan. I'm not going to just slight the guy just because they're bringing in someone else. We both liked Eddie last year. Steady Eddie. That was our nickname for him. Eddie Money, whatever you want to call it. The guy would make kicks. It's just once you hit 50 and beyond, it's like, holy shit. And then you miss the one in Atlanta, and everyone remembers the one in Atlanta, the one you can't miss. He missed two of them that year, or in that game. So, yeah, Eddie had a good day today. You mentioned it off the top of the episode, 5 for 5, hit a 52-yarder. So it's going to be interesting. May the best man win. I mean, confidence is everything in a kicker. And when you have it, you're on. And when you don't, you're awful. And you're only as good as your next kick. So, yeah, it'll be interesting. I don't know who's going to – I'm curious when we actually go to camp. We should be there. Hopefully, I think next week is when we'll be there.
Yep.
And get to see some of this in action and see, which kickers going which way. But, yeah, 50 – like – it would be nice when your offense is struggling to put points on the board. When you get close at the 50, you're not, not going out there and you're punting it like they did last year in Chicago was the game. So
39.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting battle there. Another position. And we talked about this early on in the episode, but that wide receiver, the back end of the wide receiver room, who's 4, 5, and 6? Or, how many receivers do they carry? 7? Do they carry 5? Do they carry 6? And I don't know what Tampa Bay carried last year. That might be something to look into of how many wideouts they had. But who is 4, 5, 6, 7? You got, a guy who a lot of people were intrigued by, Coker. It sounds like he was cleared to play. He was initially on the pup list, but they took him off. So that's a good sign for him, for a guy who's really trying to fight, undrafted, was, highly regarded as an undrafted pickup. You got TMJ, the TMJ project, the guy they, wanted to be traded last year. They didn't give it to him, or there wasn't anyone out there interested in him. He's trying to fight for the spot. You got ISM, he's like the Sam Franklin on offense. The guy's got energy up the ass and he's electric when he's on the field and has the ball in his hands. I don't know. I really like him. I'm always pulling for that dude. What's your thoughts on Thielen while we're talking about wide receivers?
I
I'm
looked up quickly.
Vibe. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say I looked up quickly what the Bucs had last year, and they only kept five receivers on the roster.
Exactly, so. And I've seen that in someone like depth chart projections that they might carry five. But yeah, what's your thoughts on Thielen? Did he work out with Bryce Young this off, like in June? Was he there? Like, maybe I'm making a big deal out of this, and there doesn't need to be, but like, he was very heavily involved with JJ McCarthy, and I don't remember seeing him working out with Bryce Young. He might have been there. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I missed it, but I don't know.
I mean, I didn't see it if it was out there either. He's been with JJ McCarthy, like 2 or 3 times, and there's been video, and I think there was like a report out saying that the Panthers could cut him and he would go back to Minnesota and play with JJ.
Well, and then he had the comment when he was out on the golf course that, he wanted to go to the Kansas City last year, and then they didn't want him or something like that. But
yeah, and then he was on Pardon My Take and talking about how he thought he was going to retire a Minnesota Viking, and he was upset about it. And no hard feelings towards Minnesota, but he really wanted to be there for his whole career. So I don't know where he's at. I think, from all accounts, he's a good teammate, and I think he has.
Well, yeah, and he's talked good about Bryce Young. It's not like the guy's trashing anyone. I don't know. I just get some weird. It just seems like there's something going on there, but maybe not. Maybe I'm just reading into it.
No, I agree. I mean, I think when you see your best wide receiver from the previous season working out with a different team's quarterback more than once, there's a little bit of like, okay, what's going on here, But maybe Bryce Young's been working with Leggett and Deontay Johnson more, and Thielen's kind of cast off. I don't know what the situation is, but it is a little strange, and we'll see how it plays out. But I do not buy in whatsoever to the quote unquote rumor that the Panthers are considering cutting Thielen. And
I don't think that's a smart move. You don't get rid of Bryce Young's best target last year, whether he was force fed or not. There's a connection there.
Absolutely. The only wide receiver on the roster that has chemistry with Bryce Young, you do not cut. you don't do that. So I don't buy that rumor whatsoever, and that's what I tweeted about it as well. So yeah, we'll see how it plays out. But maybe it was just I believe Thielen, still has a house up there, and I think that's where most of his family's from. I think he grew up in Minnesota, went to high school, went to college, and then played there. So I think, he's just got a connection there, and maybe that's all it is.
Yeah, well, I think we're going to leave it there. And, again, like I said, we're going to be at, I think, 4 or 5 practices, and we'll do what we can to push out content. And this was our first live show. I appreciate everyone who tuned in, all the comments. We do appreciate the support. Because, we were a little nervous coming into this tonight with going live and stuff. It just adds another element. But I think it went well, and we just appreciate it, and we're going to keep it up, and we'll try to do it weekly on Wednesdays at this same time, and we'll keep it rolling. And, hopefully we have, good things to talk about this season, because we're due for it. We really are. So I just some housekeeping. Make sure you guys subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Twitter. You can listen to this podcast. It'll be dropped on all of our platforms in the morning as well. If you want to listen to it over, if you haven't listened to it yet, please do. It's wherever you get your podcast. And we will see you guys next week. Thank you for tuning in.